Welcome back to this third session of Beyond Getting Started. Today, we're going to start looking at charts and calculations. So we're just going to do the basics today. In future sessions, we're going to take deep dives into charts and how to do advanced calculations. But today, I want to start with the basics. I'm sure up till now, in the first two sessions, you've been asking yourself, well, when are we actually going to get on and do some charting and do some calculations? Well, today's the day we're going to start. Also, if you haven't seen the first two sessions, please go back in the playlist and start at session one and go through the first two sessions. They provide a foundation that you really need before you can go on. Just a little bit about me. For those of you who don't know, my name is Jim Dehner. I am a three-time Tableau Visionary, a seven-time Forum Ambassador. I may know some of you from the newbie group, where I am the co-leader of the Tableau newbie group. And I am also a co-leader of the Nashville Tug. Now, I want to start with basic charts and how to do basic charts. We're gonna work from something very simple, and then we're going to work our way up, and we're going to take a look at a number of different chart types. If you're new to Tableau and you're new to charts, I'm going to encourage you to use Show Me, which is the easiest way for you to make a chart. Up here in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you see a button up here that says Show Me. It's a toggle switch. You can toggle it on and off. The way it works is you can select a couple of dimensions or measures, click on Show Me, and drop down opens up. Show Me. Tableau is going to show you a recommended chart, the chart that's used most often when you have that combination of dimensions and measures. It'll also show you other charts that can be made from that same type of those same combinations. Let's go ahead and get started, and we can see how it works. I'm going to start using Superstore data. I just have to move me over here. I'm going to use Superstore data, and because it's a data set that came with your copy of Tableau, you can reproduce anything that we're doing here. You just load your copy of Tableau and you can load it up. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to take a couple of items. We're going to take a look at category, and I want to take a look at sales. And all I'm doing is holding down the control key as I do this, and I've got those two selected. And then we'll go over to Show Me, and we'll open this up. And this is what you saw before. These charts, all of these charts that are highlighted here, can be made using those two dimensions. And you can see as I hover over each chart type, down here it tells you what the chart type is called, and it also tells you what's needed to make that chart type. Well, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use this bar chart. It's the recommended chart type. It's the chart that's used most often when you have that combination. And all I have to do is click on this, and I get a chart. Just that simple. Now, I'm going to encourage you to try different charts and try different ways of putting the same data together and see what works for you and what works best for you. But let's go on from here. The close Show Me and get it out of the way. We just click on that toggle switch again. Well, now we've got a basic chart. Okay. I'd like to do a couple things with the chart. We can look at sales, and you notice when I hover over sales here, this icon opens up and it allows me to sort the sales. And now the sales are sorted descending. I can change that to sort ascending or not sort at all. Okay. So I've sorted it descending. We can open this for category up, and it's a hierarchy. And we can see the subcategories, and we can see within each category, each of the subcategories is sorted the same way. They're sorted descending, and they're descending by sales. Now, you might want to add some color to a chart. People say, well, how can I add color to a chart? Well, it's very easily done. If I want to color each category, I can take the category and I hover and drop it on the color tile in the marks card here. And now we've added color to our chart. If we want to add labels to the chart, that is also easily done. Go over to the labels tile. Each one of these individual icons here is called a tile. And we can open up the tile and we can show the marks. Okay. And now we have the sales total applied on the chart. Okay? If we wanted to format it differently, we can open up the format here. We can take a look at different fonts. We can take a look at different colors. Let's make them bold. And as far as alignment, automatically it's going to go to the end of the chart. But we don't have to have them on the end of the chart. We can put them anywhere we want. Let's put them in the middle of the chart or back on the end of the chart. Now, once again, I'm going to encourage you to go out and do this with your own data set. The only way you're going to learn Tableau is by actually using it. And the more you use it, the better you're going to get with it. I'm going to go on and show you a number of different chart types, and we're going to look at how we can go about creating those charts. The chart that we just looked at is a bar chart, and it is probably the most frequent type of chart that new users will use. Next to that, or second to that, is a trend chart, where you want to look at data over a period of time. And I'm going to just open up something that I've already created here. And you can see I've got the sum of sales, and on columns, I've got dates. And if you remember from one of the previous sessions we had, we talked about discrete versus continuous. And these date pills, they're blue, they're a discrete date. And I've got it broken out by year, by quarter. And if we were to open this up again, we can open up the hierarchy, and we can go down to month, and we could eventually go down to day if we wanted to. Well, we're going to get into date functions probably in the next session. It's going to be it's a pretty involved topic. But let's just go back, and we're going to take a look at quarters again. Now, a very common request we get is the chart is broken. Shows for each year I've got quarters, but it's broken when it comes to the end of the year. Well, that's because it's a discrete chart. Discrete charts are broken down by quarter, and the mark is in the center of that period for the quarter. So the fourth quarter is in the center of this range, and the first quarter of the next year is in the center of that range. If we wanted to convert this to a continuous chart and we wanted to connect those lines, we can do that. I'm going to do two things here. First, I'm going to open this pill. I'm just going to right click and open this pill, and you can see this drop down opens up. And like I say, next session, we're going to get heavily into dates. So we're just going to cover the highlights here. This group here that starts at year and goes down to more are all discrete date parts. This group that's below it are continuous date parts. Okay. And I want to look at quarter level, and I'm going to pull off years. And when I do that, you can see, oh, now I have a continuous chart that starts in the first quarter of 2020 and goes on to the fourth quarter of 2023. And sure enough, we can look at that on a month basis, and we cover the entire range also. Okay, just want to go back and look at quarters. It's a little easier here. Well, what are some of the things we can do with this? Well, we can put labels on that chart and show the labels if we wanted to. We might want to only see the highest value and the lowest value. So instead of seeing all labels, we can select the min and the max value. And all we're going to get is this value. That's the minimum value on the chart, and that's the maximum value. For some reason, we may only want to see the ends of the line. We get the first value and the last value. Or we can go back and we can see all values on the chart. I'm going to turn that off because it's going to get a little messy here in just a second. I might also, right now we're seeing all the data broken down into quarterly buckets. But I might want to see that same data by category, and I can drag that onto the chart. Well, I can drag it onto the chart here. Now all of a sudden I got 3 lines, and they're very difficult to see. So I might want to separate them by color. And now I can just drag that up and put it on color, or I can click on this icon over here, and we call that the detail icon, and we can select color. And now I've got the data broken out by color, by category, by color. So I can see the 3 charts simultaneously. We can look at trend lines for furniture, office supplies, and technology. Very, very easily done. All kinds of different ways that you can put dates together, and you can start filtering dates. For example, if all we wanted to do, I'm going to just take the order date and put it on filters, and we're going to look at years here. And if I just wanted to look at the last 2 years, 22 and 23, I can do that. And now we filter the data, and we're just looking at those two dates. And we're going to get deeper and deeper into this as we get further and further into these sessions. Okay, let's take a look at the next chart type. And this chart type is a scatter plot. And a scatter plot, and I'm just going to close this off for a second. So a scatter plot is a way to compare disaggregated data at by comparing two different measures. And here we're going to take a look at our sum of sales, and that's what we're going to put on our horizontal axis, and our vertical axis here is going to be the sum of profit. And when I drag those two onto the chart, you're going to see one data point show up. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to see all the data points show up, or I can control what I see by dragging another dimension to the marks card. If we were to drag category to the marks card, there's 3 categories, and we'll see 3 data points. If I open that up and look at subcategory, now we're looking at 17 because there's 17 subcategories. Now, once again, this gets a little bit busy because I can't tell the difference between the data points. So I can open that up and I can put color on those data points. I could also take I could also take this. I could also take these data points and I can make their size change. I'm taking the sum of sales here and I'm putting it on the size tile. And you can see now that the size of these are no longer the same. And I've opened up a dialog here, or I've opened up a legend here that shows us the range of size for those values. What you're able to do with a scatter plot is disaggregate the data at any level that you would choose. If, for example, here we wanted to add another, let's say we wanted to include segment on this chart, we could drop segment on this chart. And now you see we've added segment data on the chart also. And now it's very difficult to see, but we can change the segments, the shapes, and we can look at different shapes for different segments. Okay. Once again, play with the chart, get familiar with the chart, understand what the chart does and how you're able to use it. Now, one of the things that comes up quite often is people want to look at a breakdown of a category and a subcategory as a percent of total sales. And a good chart to do that with is known as a tree chart. And this is what a tree chart looks like. I'm going to take all of this off here and I'm going to show you how this is all created. Okay. We're going to start just by taking the sum of sales and dropping it on the chart. And you see we've got 1 point there. You'll see that the chart type is a square. This is where you change the chart type. We can use squares, circles, shapes, a variety of different chart types. But for this one, we're going to look at squares. And now I want to take the category and place the category on the marks card. We don't put it on rows, we don't put it on columns, we put it on the marks card. And now I want to open that up. And you can see as I open that up, we're breaking down each one of these categories by the subcategories. I'm going to take category again. I'm going to put category on color so we can begin to see what the breakdown is by category and by subcategory. And we can start putting in, let's convert this so we can start seeing what these subcategories are. I can make that labels. I just right click this, just open up this value and I'm going to click on labels. And now we can see what each one of these subcategories are. And the way this aligns is the largest on a percentage basis subcategory starts in the upper left-hand corner and works toward the lower right-hand corner as you get to smaller and smaller subcategories. We're showing all the marks on the card. I want to add some additional information. I'd like to know what the sales are. So I'm taking another sales pill and I'm going to drop it on the label card. And now we know what the sum of sales is for each one of these subcategories. Now, this is kind of an interesting way to look at a breakdown of the percent of sales by your categories and subcategories. It also makes a very interesting chart. We can take the same data. We can take the same data and we can look at it a number of different ways. And here I'm going to go to Show Me. I'm going to open up Show Me, and you can see the number of different ways we can look at the same data that's already on the chart. You know, for example, if I wanted to look at this as this is a packed bubble chart, okay? If I wanted to look at it as a bubble chart, all I'd have to do is click over here, and now we're looking at it as a bubble chart, a packed bubble chart, at that. Okay. We might want to look at it as we're now looking at the categories. We're looking at a box and whisker chart for those categories. And if we could open that up, we could take a look at individual subcategories. But I'm going to go back and this is the chart that we started with. I've just messed up all the colors on the chart, making it discrete. The point here is the choice is yours as the designer to understand and to decide how you want to show the data and what is most clear for the users or for the group that you're working with. And you have many options. I want to show you one more chart type, and this chart type comes up all the time, and everybody loves it. Everybody loves doing mapping, and maps are so easy to do in Tableau. And I'm just going to start. I'll just plain start with a whole new sheet to do a map. We've got data here, and if I open up this, look at the location, we can see this icon that looks like a globe. Well, that's our geodata. And as long as an icon is already identified as a geodata type, Tableau knows how to plot this and plot the longitudes and latitudes of that data. And if we want to make a map, all we have to do is take that data. We're going to take state and province here, and we're going to drop it on the canvas. All I did was right click, drag it, and drop it right on the canvas. And all of a sudden, I got a map associated with that. Now, a couple things have happened. You can see that the longitude and the latitude have been added to the rows and to the columns. It's important to understand that those are generated by Tableau. That's not in your data. And you can't use the generated longitude and latitude in calculations. It's just not available. There's a couple of other things that you're going to see here. You're going to see that I've got something down here that says 10 unknowns. And that means that there are 10 data, there's 10 data types, 10 records of state and province that Tableau doesn't know what to do with. And I'm going to open that up. And whenever you get a message and whenever you're doing a plan, open that up and see what those are and make a decision how to deal with those. Now we have a choice. All I did was click on that, and this window opens. We have a choice what to do. We can either edit their location, we can filter the data, or we can show them at a default position. And I'll tell you right now, the default position is in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. But our case, we're going to edit the location because I want to see what those unknown locations are. Now, when I open those up, I can see those unrecognized areas. I don't know what to do with these. All these other areas, Tableau knows what to do with. But these unrecognized areas, it doesn't know what to do with. I only want a map of the United States. I don't want to see these. So, a couple of ways I can deal with this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drag country to filter, and I'm going to filter for the US only. So now I'm looking at US data only. So you can see the warning message that was over here is now gone. I'm looking at a map of the United States, and I'm looking at a circle map or a dot in the center of each one of the states. Now we can go further. We can say, what would I like to know about the states itself? What would I like to plot on that? I'd like to put sales on the data, and I've added sales, and sales went on size. You can see that California, New York, and Texas are large, but all these values in the center, they all kind of look alike, and I don't really know what they are. So I can just drop this on color, and now I've got a map that's colored in. And if you notice here, we're no longer looking at a circle map, but the map type has changed. And it is now a filled map. Okay. So we fill the map, and Tableau knows each of the state boundaries, and it knows how to fill a map. Let's take a look at what happened with color. Now we've got color here that's a divergent color type. And if we were to open up the color tile, we can see that we can edit the colors. And if I click on edit colors, you can see a window opens up. And Tableau has a number of palettes available. The default is this kind of aqua to dark blue palette, and that's this guy right up here. But all these other palettes are available, and you can even customize your own palette. I've got a couple that I use that I've got in as custom palettes. But we can change the color, and we can take a look at orange, for example, and we can apply that color. And we can see that's really garish, and maybe we don't want to look at that. Or we can look at divergent with multiple colors in it. Here we've gone green and gold. Now I would caution you, they do have red and green in here, and I just passed over it someplace. They do have red and green in here, but be careful using red and green because here it is right here. Be careful using red and green because a lot of people are colorblind. And red and green is the most common type of color blindness. So kind of stay away from that if you can. One of the very popular palettes is a, hang on just a second, not red and gold. You can take a look at this, or we can take a look at this palette here. Okay. Now we get to look at a number of different types like that, and it's a continuous measure across there, and you can see how the palette is laid out. We can also convert this to a discrete palette, and we can dial in the number of steps that we'd like to see. Right now, if we apply that, kind of trying to get that out of the way. Okay. Right now, there's 5 steps going from 920 up to 470 or 460,000. And we can take that up and increase the number of steps and apply that. And it's kind of hard to see any difference. So I would caution you on when you make these changes to make sure that it's enhancing the message that you're delivering to your end user. And we can apply this, and now we're looking at 4 steps in the color palette. Also notice that you can reverse the palette. You know, this is showing like the red end of the scale is the highest value and the green end of the scale is the lowest value. You might want to reverse that. You might not want that palette that way. So we can reverse that palette. We can apply that. So now the green is the high end of the palette and the red is the low end of the palette. But this is a case where you need to decide how you best convey the message to your end user. Okay, now we're going to move on to calculations and basic calculations. Now, all we're going to do today is we're going to go through some relative, what I call them is simple calculations. We're going to do some if-then calculations, but we're also going to do some simple calculations. The next three lessons, or the next three sessions, we're going to go through date calculations. We're going to go through LODs, and then we're going to go through table calculations, and it's going to get more involved. But you really have to understand how to create a calculation and how to debug calculation before we can move on. And I'm going to suggest that you always use the calculation wizard. I've been doing this for a long time, and I use the calculation wizard almost all the time when writing a calculation. Now, the calculation wizard, much like the show me that we were using on math, gives you a way of both creating and debugging calculation as you write it. You get to the calculation wizard by opening a drop down on the data pane right up here, and then calculation wizard opens it up, and you can start by writing in a function if you know the function. And Tableau is going to try to autofill or suggest what functions to put in. If you don't know the function, no problem. You can go to the right-hand pane, and all the functions are listed here. They're categorically grouped together, and you can search by category. And with each function, there comes an explanation of what the function does and how it does it. And there's also a syntax checker. And I want to emphasize, it's just checking the syntax. It's not checking the logic. I mean, you can have bad logic and you're going to get a value you don't want. That's not Tableau's issue. That's your issue. You have to understand the logic and how to create the calculation. Well, let's go ahead and we're going to create a couple of calculations, and I'm going to show you how to go about using the calculation wizard. The data that we're going to use here is just this this common data set, the Superstore data set. And I want to do a number of examples using sales data broken down by category. To get to the calculation wizard, right up here, I open that drop down and I got create calculated field. There's also a number of other things you can do, but just click on create calculated field and the calculation wizard opens up. And it looks like this. Now, for those of you who have done a lot of programming in Excel, this is kind of the same idea of the wizard that they have that helps you write calculations. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to give a name to this this calculation. It's going to end up being a measure in this case, and that name is going to appear in your data set. When everything's done, it's going to appear in the data table, and it's going to be like another column in that data table. So we're going to calculate the ASP, or the average selling price. Now, the calculation is nothing more than the sum of sales. And you can see Tableau is already suggesting and saying, whoa, you want sum. And I'm going to sales, it's saying, oh, you want sales. And I can just drop that in by accepting that value. I've got the sum of sales. And I'm going to put that over quantity, the quantity. And you can see right away I'm getting an error. I'm getting a syntax error. And we can open that syntax error up. And it's hard to read here. It says you cannot mix aggregate and non-aggregate functions. And that's probably the most common syntax error you're going to run into. You see this little squiggly line, and I'm going to make this larger here. So you can see it. You see this little squiggly line? That tells you approximately where the error is. And if you hover over it, it also tells you what the error is. It says you can't mix aggregates and non-aggregates. Well, let's take a look at what it's trying to tell us in what we're doing here. I'm just gonna apply this right now and accept it. And you can see I've got an error here. There's a red. You can see this red exclamation point. It says there's something wrong with that calculation. What I'd like to do, and I got to move. I'm sorry, but I got to move me over here back to the other side. What I'd like to do is I'd like to take a look at the data that we've got in this data set. And if we open up that hamburger there, we can see the data. We can see the data that we've got in the data table for this worksheet. And you can see there's 10,000 rows of data. Okay. Now, I'm going to close that off and I'm going to open up. I'm going to go to analysis here and I'm going to view the data. I'm going to open up this hamburger. I'm going to open that up and I'm going to take a look and it says, wait a minute, there's 3 rows of data. So what we've done in this aggregation, when we did sum of sales here, what we did is we took those 10,000 rows of data and we put them in 3 categories. We put them in furniture, office supplies, and technology. And all those 10,000 rows of data have been aggregated into one of those 3 categories. So there's only 3 rows of data. So we've got 10,000 rows of data in the base data set, 3 rows of data here in this data table. Now, when I'm going to open this up again, and all I did was right click it and I'm going to edit. Now, in this calculation that's wrong, we have this same expression. This is 3 rows of data. This is 10,000 rows of data, 10,000 records, if you will. Okay. And this is 3. And what this message means, we get this message that says you can't mix aggregate and non-aggregate. It's saying, hey, wait a minute. Jim, you got 3 over here and you got 10,000 over there. No, you got to tell me how to make this 10,000 into 3 so that everything matches up. And Tableau can't do that for you, but we can do it. We can do this with a sum. Okay. And now the expression is valid. Okay. Anytime you get an aggregation error, you have the same problem. It'll look different as we get into more and more complex calculations. It'll look like, geez, it doesn't look like something is aggregated, but in fact it is, and therefore everything in the expression has to be aggregated. Once any dimension or measure is aggregated, everything has to be aggregated to the same level, and I think you understand that now. So we're going to accept this, and we're going to put the average selling price up there, and you can see that we have that data in place now. Okay, now I'd like to take a look at when you would use aggregated data and when you would use what we call row level data or non-aggregated level data. And for the most part, you're almost always going to end up using aggregated data. But there are some occurrences where, for one reason or another, you want the data at the row level. And I want to show you what the difference in that data would look like and how you go about calculating that if you wanted it. I've got a calculation over here that I call this row level data. And we are back at that 10,000 record level. But now they match up. I've got 10,000 records that represent sales, and I got 10,000 for quantity. So from an aggregation standpoint, they're at the same level, and I can look at that data, and that's what we see here in the last column. This is the data that we just calculated, or the ASP at the aggregate level, or the 3 record level. So now if we open up this data set, we're going to go to analysis, and we're going to view the data itself. We can see the data that we've got here. If I take a look at the detailed data, there's 10,000 records here. I've got the row level calculation, which is 10,000 records, and I've got sales data shown, I've got quantity shown. Now, what we're doing when we take the sum of the row level data, you see when I brought this record, when I brought this calculation to the canvas, that's what this is called, the canvas, it got aggregated as sum. Okay, and what's happening here is for each one of these categories, and we're looking at the 3 categories that are there: furniture, office supplies, and technology. This data, this sales over quantity, that data is being added together. We're not getting the sum of sales over the sum of quantity. That's this value here, where we take all of the sales for the 3,000 records that represent office supplies, for example, divided by the 3,000 records, the sum of the 3,000 records that represent the quantity for office supplies. That's this value. That's the aggregated sum of sales over sum of quantity. This value is each one of the individual records. It's the sales divided by the quantity for each one of the records in the furniture category, and then we add those together. Now, there will be occasions where you want to use that. So you need to know how to calculate that. Okay. I want to take a look at aggregating dimensions, because dimensions, and once again, if you should understand the difference between dimensions and measures now, because we covered that, I think it was in the first session that we talked about. But when we take a look at aggregating dimensions, and we will have to aggregate dimensions if anything else in the formula is aggregated. There's only 5 things you can do to aggregate dimensions. You either have the minimum, the maximum, the count distinct, where count distinct gets rid of the duplicates, or it only counts the duplicates once, or there's a function that allows you to do ATTR, an attribute, if you will. So I'm just taking the category here, and we're counting the subcategories. Within the category, there's 4 furniture subcategories, and we can open that up and we can take a look and we can say, oh yeah, there they are. There's the 4. They're bookcases, chairs, furnishings, and tables. And then there are 9 in the office supplies, and there's 4 in technology. Let's write a different statement so that you can see how this might work. I'm going to create a calculated field again. And what I would like to do is what I would like to do is find the last order date, the maximum order date, if you will, by category. And I can do that by just doing a and when you see when I brought that to it just happens that the last order date in furniture and the last order date in office supplies and the last order date in technology all happen to be the same date. Okay. Now let's see if we can. Okay. As we look at the subcategory level, that max order date for bookcases was the 30th of December. For chairs, it was the 29th of December, and for tables, it was the 25th of December. So I can use the dimension, and here we're using date as a dimension, and I can use the aggregation max to find the max value. Now we're going to go through a lot more of this in the next lesson, but I just wanted you to see how that was done. Let's take a look at some conditional statements and how conditional statements. Okay, now I want to move on to conditional statements, or if statements, that you'd use in Excel or your spreadsheet calculator. You can certainly use those in Tableau, but the syntax is a little bit different. And I want to go over that syntax with you. We're going to start with the same type of chart that we've been working with. It's just a text chart where we've got sales by category by year. And to that, I'm going to add an if statement. And we're going to go through the syntax and what the statement does and how the statement works. Now, the keyword for the statement is if, and it starts out if, and then we have a test condition. And here the test condition is the category. I want the category to equal furniture. And it has to be an exact match, a literal match, if you will. If this is true, then the second keyword, execute a calculation, sales, else 0. So what this is going to do is if the category equals furniture, we're going to have sales. If it's anything else, it's going to return a value of 0. And we're just going to put that on the chart. I'm going to do it this way so we can see it very clearly. And we can see that our calculation does return a 0 for office supplies and technology, but for furniture, it returns the value of sales. Well, let's go to a little bit more complex uh, calculation. And this is one that we want to look at where we have multiple clauses, multiple test conditions, if you will, and see how that would work. Okay, and here I'm using region. And with the Superstore data, there are 4 regions. There's the central, the east, the south, and the west. And I've just written an expression. If the region equals south, that's our first test condition, then sales. Else if. Okay, here's the second clause, and the keyword to start that out is else if. And you have multiple conditions, you would use multiple else if statements. So here's our second statement. Else if the region equals west, I want 1.5 times the sales. Now, if neither of those are true, then else, for anything else, I want 1.2 times sales. Now, it's important to note that Tableau is going to go through each record individually, one at a time. And as soon as that record goes through this if then statement, as soon as it returns a true, it's going to execute the then clause. And when it does that, Tableau is going to go on to the next record. Okay. And we can see here we've got 3 conditions essentially. If it's south, and here's the south region, I want sales. I want to return sales. So the sales and the result of the if then are the same. If it's from the west, I want 1.5 times sales. So here's sales, here's 1.5 times sales. And for anything else, and that would be the central region or the eastern region, I want 1.2 times sales. And that's certainly what we're seeing there. Okay. Now, there's many more things that you can do with calculations, and we're going to get into that in the next 3 sessions. We're going to get deeply into date functions. We're going to get into LOD expressions, and then we're going to get into table calculations. Between now and then, my recommendation to you is practice, practice, practice. Practice using charts, practice using show me, and practice using simple calculations and also conditional statements, if-then type statements. Looking forward to seeing you then. Thank you very much for your time today. And as always, all this information is already sitting out on my blog at jimdehner.com, and you can download my workbooks at my Tableau public site. Thank you for your time. Bye now.